Hi everyone, this is Dr. Smith. We are going to take a real quick look at how to create dummy variables inside Excel. This is something that you have to do if you're using real data and you've got some categorical data that you need to include in, say, a regression analysis. So you'll see on the left-hand side of my screen here, I've got essentially a set of colors. In this case, there are 4 different colors. We have green, we have red, we have blue, and we have yellow. And what we want to do is we want to create dummy variables for each of those 4 categories. So we're essentially going to end up with a red column. We're going to have a blue column. We're going to have a green column, and we're going to have a yellow column. And what we want is in each of these columns, we want essentially ones and zeros. That's a dummy variable to indicate whether this color is in that category or not. So we'll do the red column by hand just to make sure we understand what we want to be there. And then we'll do the blue, green, and yellow programmatically using Excel functions. So for example, in the red column, we want this to be a 1 if the color is red, and we want it to be a 0 if it's not. So for example, green is not red, so we'll put a 0. Red is red, so we'll put a 1. Blue is not, so 0, 1, and then working our way down until we hit another red, which is a while, all the way down to the bottom. Oh, there's a red, blue, red. Okay, so we end up with this is what our dummy variables should look like. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 reds in our data set, which is what we want, which is what it is. All right, now that worked because in this case we only have 19 observations. That would not work so well if we had to do that several thousand times, right? If we had a data set that they had 10,000 observations in it, I promise you, you do not want to spend your day working your way down, putting ones and zeros. We want to be able to do this a little faster. So to do that, we are going to use the if function in Excel, and that's going to allow us to do this programmatically. So when you want to write a function in Excel, the way you do that is you start off your cell with the equal sign. That tells Excel, hey, we're about to write a function. Now the function that we're going to use is the if function. So I start typing if, and notice it starts pulling up there, oh, looks like you're writing a function. Here's all the functions that start with the letters IF. We're going to use that if function, so I'm going to press the tab key. And what that does is it says, all right, here's what an if statement looks like. So as we'll see, essentially, to use some programming language, an if statement has 3 parameters. So 3 things that we're going to give to the if statement. The first thing is called what Excel's calling the logical test. It's a test that's either going to return true or false. So we're going to check something. If it's true, we want something to happen. If it's false, we want something else to happen. So if that test that we give first, if it returns true, then the second parameter that we have here is called value if true. That's what's going to show up if our test returns true. The last parameter, value if false, is what's going to show up if that test returns false. Okay, so what is our test? So our test, in this case, we're in the blue column. We want to test to see, is the color blue? If it's true, we're going to want to do something. If it's false, we're going to do something else. So our color is over here in cell A2. So we want to say if that color is equal to blue. So if the word in cell A2 is equal to blue, we're going to put a 1 in this cell. So how do we do that? So if A2 equals blue, we literally just write out the word blue. Now notice I put that in quotation. I put quotations around the word blue because we have to tell Excel that this is essentially a word. So we put quotes around it because it in programming language is called a string. Now, so if A2 is equal to blue, which in this case it's not, but if it were, what we want is we're going to put comma, because we're separating our 3 parameters with commas. So if that were true, I want it to put a 1 there. But if it's false, so I put a comma, I want it to put a 0. And then we close out our parentheses. Oops. Close out our parentheses by that closes out the function. So notice what we've got here. We've got three things. We've got our test, A2 equals blue. That's either going to be true or that's going to be false. If it's true, I want it to put a 1 in that cell. If it's if it's false, I want it to put a 0. So we hit enter, it puts a 0 because A2 is not blue, it's green. Now what I'm going to do is we're going to copy that function down. So I'm going to do this for one cell first by clicking on this little green box in the lower right hand corner and dragging down, and it copies that function down. But if you look at the function that's written up here in the function bar, it's not A2 anymore, it's A3. Notice Excel was smart and it changed the cell reference because we went down one row. It changed the reference to the color in A3, not in A2. So Excel's pretty smart. So now what we're going to do is we're going to double click this little green box in the right corner, and that's going to copy that function all the way down to the bottom of our data. And notice we get a 1 when the color is blue and zeros when it is not. That's exactly what we want. Now we're going to do the exact same thing for the color green. We're going to say equals if A2 is equal to green, then put a 1, otherwise put a 0. Great, it gave us a 1 because in A2 it is green. So we're going to copy that down. The exact same thing for yellow. If A2 is equal to yellow, put a 1, otherwise put a 0. Copy that function all the way down, and boom, we now have our 4 dummy variables created off the 4 different categories in our colors column. That's all you have to do. At this point, you can now include those dummy variables in your regression analysis or any other analysis that you might want to do.